"Hey son, you took your first steps in this church." The line cut through the hymn like a hand sweeping dust from glass. Adam Hale looked up from the missal he wasn't reading, the paper soft against his thumb, the words blurring. The elderly woman beside him had turned her face toward him, eyes warm and curious, not demanding anything, just naming a fact that struck the air the way a bell does. He felt his shoulders tighten before he could stop them. For a second he forgot to breathe. Incense hung low beneath the arches. The light had the color of old honey, where it fell through stained glass. Somewhere behind him, a child coughed and was shushed with a gentle palm. The choir's voices blended like water against stone. He had come here to disappear for an hour, to be a tall, well-dressed stranger in the fourth pew on the left, to rest his mind in the slow rhythm of kneel and rise and sit. Outside, the world wanted him loud. Inside, he wanted the quiet to hold. He managed a small nod. "Pardon?" "You," she said, smiling as if she could taste the memory. "Right down that aisle, wobbly little thing. Your mother cried." We all clapped. The woman's scarf was faded rose, the knit frayed at the edge. A silver ring on her finger clicked softly against the pew when she shifted. He tried to picture it and couldn't. He could feel, instead, a rush of scent, polish and candle wax, and the dry sweet of old wood. He looked toward the aisle. A narrow beam of sun lay across it like a path someone kept sweeping clear. His hand, still holding the missal, tightened, the paper creasing under his thumb. A boy in the pew ahead turned around and stared up at him with frank open eyes. "Are you famous?" the boy whispered. The boy's mother placed 2 fingers on his shoulder. "Face front," she murmured, but she glanced back too. Quick and assessing, a half-smile of recognition that didn't land fully. Adam's gaze dropped. He found the seam of the varnish on the pew, and traced it with a fingertip, feeling the tiny ridges where years had picked at it. The organ fell quiet for the homily. The priest cleared his throat and spoke about small beginnings and the patience of seeds. Adam watched the dust swim in the light above the lectern, and tried to set his thoughts in order. He had meetings. There were messages waiting on a phone he had silenced. There was a decision lined up like a signed page in a folder, sharp and final. He had come early and sat in the back, then moved forward by habit when the crowd thinned. He hadn't planned to be seen. He hadn't planned for her. "I said sorry," he whispered, barely moving his mouth. Did we? "Know each other," she supplied, amused. Everyone knew everyone, once. She looked forward again, hands folded, content to let the moment rest. The pew creaked when she shifted her weight. He felt something like relief that she didn't push. He tried to listen to the priest. Words rose and fell. "Faith grows in the hidden place," he said. "Faith pays attention." Adam felt the strap of his watch against his wrist and adjusted it a notch tighter than looser. He didn't pray exactly. He let the silence press around him, steady as a hand on a shoulder. A draft slipped through the old windows. It found the gap at his collar. He smelled rain somewhere far off. Or maybe it was the memory of rain in a summer years ago, carried by the resin and wax. He noticed how the light took the shape of each pane before it hit the floor. He noticed how the old woman's breath fluttered when she sang, how she tapped the hymn's rhythm with a finger against the pew, as if keeping time was a kindness. He had the sense of teetering, as though he stood at the edge of a small step no one else could see. Not a cliff, just a single drop that still mattered. The feeling made his jaw tighten. He unclenched and swallowed. At communion he stayed seated. He watched the line move, the little bow, the soft exchange, the brief candles of people's faces when they lifted their chins. The boy from the pew ahead looked back once more and grinned with a gap in his teeth. "Hi," he mouthed, like a secret. Adam's chest warmed unexpectedly. He raised 2 fingers in a small wave. When the old woman returned to sit, she steadied herself on the pew with one hand and on his forearm with the other, light as a sparrow. He felt the weight of her palm through his jacket. It didn't last more than a heartbeat. It startled him, not because of the touch, but because of how gently she assumed it would be welcome. "Careful," he said, a breath late. "Always," she answered, and then, as if the thought had been sitting beside her the whole time, "Your mother had the prettiest laugh." It lifted the room. The words landed like a quiet knock on a closed door inside him. He looked at the floor, at the scuff made by a black shoe, where the aisle turned. He let out a breath he hadn't known he held. His throat tightened. He nodded. She did, he said, and his own voice sounded far away to him, like someone calling across water. The final hymn began, bright and simple. People found their coats. The boy tried to put on his by himself and tangled the sleeve. Adam reached without thinking and straightened it. "Thanks," the boy said. "My name is Theo." "Adam," he said. "Like the first man," Theosep's mother said, smiling now, recognition complete. "Welcome back." He didn't say he wasn't back. He didn't say he was passing through, that he'd chosen this mass because it fit between other obligations. He stood and let the crowd carry him toward the aisle. The old woman fell in beside him with small, certain steps. He noticed the gentle tremor in her hand, and the way she still held her shoulders straight. At the door, a thin line of sunlight knifed across the threshold. He paused, with one foot in it. The old woman touched his sleeve. "Tea's in the hall," she said. "Just down the stairs. You can tell me you're too busy if you like." He hesitated. The pause felt like a hinge. He could hear his phone starting to vibrate inside his pocket, a silent insect against his ribs. He could feel the press of the day waiting just outside the open doors. He looked back once down the length of the nave. The light lay where she said his first steps had been, a narrow path the color of warm wheat. 5 minutes, he said. "Good," she replied, and smiled like someone who had been certain all along. "Addie," she said, like setting a cup on a saucer. The name landed softly and still shook the air. Inside him, he felt it in his chest first, a small thud, then a lift, as if something long folded had been opened by mistake. The old woman's eyes held his for a beat. They were bright and ordinary, the way a window is ordinary until you notice the field it frames. He hadn't been still, not really, but the quiet of the aisle had steadied him. Now even the quiet felt thinner. He shifted his weight. The wood beneath his shoes gave a tired groan. He looked at her scarf to avoid her face. It was a faded rose knit, the yarn a little fuzzy where it kissed the edge of her coat collar. "Addie," she said again, softer, tasting it. "You always hated that I used it, but your mother liked how it sounded." His right hand tightened around the folded missile, until the edge pressed a neat line into his palm. He loosened his grip, and let the paper breathe. A faint scent of ink rose, mingled with wax and old polish. Somewhere, someone closed the door, and a minute gust touched his cheek. A small thing happened. A wax drip slid from the base of the candle near the aisle, and fell to the floor, a round pearl that cooled in an instant. It made almost no sound. He saw it anyway. The tiny drop surprised him, as if it were proof that the world kept changing no matter who walked through the doors. He turned slightly toward her. "You stare sure it was me." She gave a half laugh that did not carry. "You took 3 steps. 1, 2, 3. Right there." She nodded at a seam in the stone. "You were chasing the light." We clapped. Your mother cried, and then laughed because she cried. The choir had stopped. The hum that lived in the building took its place. He could hear the heating pipes clicking from some far room. He could hear the ragged whisper of a page turned by someone with slow hands. His own breath felt too present. He swallowed, and it seemed to echo. A child Sep's crayon rolled out from the pew ahead, and tapped his shoe. He stooped to pick it up without thinking. The paper around it had peeled in a spiral, sticky with warmth. "Green," the boy whispered, leaning over the seat back. "Grass color." He handed it back. "Good choice." The boy nodded solemnly. "Are you Addie?" The mother touched his shoulder. "Theo, hush." She glanced at Adam with an apology that reached her eyes. Adam found a small smile. "I used to be." Theo weighed that answer like a riddle and then grinned, considering it solved. He sank back into the pew. The crayon made a soft click against the wood. The old woman's hands sat folded, clean and thin, blue veins like rivers under glass. A silver ring caught the window light and sent it back in a dull blink. He tried to place her. The bones of her face tugged at a memory that would not quite come. He tilted his head and listened to the shape of her breathing. Fault lines of time had written themselves around her mouth, kind lines that came from use. She seemed content not to press. She looked forward, as if the altar offered a view she had not finished taking in. He took that as permission to keep his voice low. "You remember my mother?" Everyone did. She kept her eyes ahead. She sang like someone speaking to a friend at the end of a long day. Soft, but you heard her. She was small, but her laugh went up to the rafters. It touched the wood. His throat tightened again. He watched the place where the candle had dropped its bead. It had flattened and made a pale coin on the stone. He wanted to press it with his thumb, and carry the mark. He did not move. A thin cough rose from the back and faded.
His gaze shifted.
A coat sleeve brushed against another with a dry whisper. Outside, a car rattled past. The rhythm of the world continued, ordinary and sure, and within it he held very still. "Addie," she said, a third time, as if to make sure it stuck. "You always ran to the windows after Mass. You stepped to press your face to the glass. Your breath fogged a circle. You drew little suns in it. Do you remember that?" He didn't. He remembered the smell of damp coats in winter, and how his mother's hand felt through a thin glove, the slight squeak of leather against skin. He remembered wanting to be lifted, and then wanting not to be. He remembered nothing of fog suns, yet he felt the truth of them. In his mind he saw a small hand make a circle, and then raise. He drew a slow breath, and let it out through his mouth. "I was a loud child," he said. She chuckled. "You were a child. That's all." The priest began the prayers of the faithful. Voices answered in a low tide. Adam kept his eyes on the aisle. His shoulders dropped a fraction, an easing he did not order. He found the edge of peace, and then lost it when his phone whispered against his ribs. The vibration made a small, insistent buzz. He let it pass. He did not reach for it. The old woman glanced at his pocket, not scolding, only noting. She tapped the hymn number with her finger. "Stay a little," she said, "if you can." He nodded, and did not trust his voice. The choir rose again, a simple melody, no ornament. He felt each note take the air and settle. He could have left. He did not. He stayed, and listened until the song found its close. When they sat, he felt the pews shift under the small concert of bodies. He was aware of the way the varnish had worn away where hands gripped to stand, a soft pale showing through the glossy brown. He laid his palm on that patch, and felt the smoothness that comes from years. A woman in a blue coat whispered as she passed, "Welcome back," not loud, not assuming, just an offering. He turned his head, but she had already gone 2 steps, guiding a toddler who toddled with the busy carefulness of someone very new to walking. The toddler's shoes flashed little lights at each step. He watched the lights blink red, 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 like small brave hearts. He looked at the old woman. "What is your name?" "D. Sepsuza," she said. "Most call me Mrs. D. You did too, once. I was your mother Sep's neighbor, 2 doors down." The door inside him opened another inch. He could feel the draft of it, cool and not unwelcome. He nodded. "Mrs. D," he repeated. The sound felt right in his mouth, like a word you didn't know you missed. A pause settled. It was not empty. It held the thin warmth of candlelight, the patient scent of turned pages, the faint, far rattle of rain starting against the high windows. In that pocket of stillness, Theo dropped the green crayon again. It rolled a gentle arc and touched Adam's shoe a second time. He picked it up. He turned it once between his fingers, feeling the paper spiral. He set it back in the boy's open palm. "Thank you," Theo said. "Addie." The name did not sting this time. It brushed him, and stayed. He found himself nodding, a quiet acknowledgement, as if the child had reminded him of something he had agreed to long ago. "Tea in the hall," Mrs. D said, not a command, not even a question. 5 minutes will do." He felt the phone hum once more. He felt his jaw unclench. He felt the weight of the small wax coin on the stone. Imagine picking it up. Imagine warming it back to softness until it took the print of his thumb. He stood when the others stood. He stayed when the others moved. He turned toward the side door that led to the stairs, and the smell of weak tea, stale biscuits, and a room full of ordinary voices. He did not know yet what he would say. He knew he would go. The paper cup gave way in his hand. It happened as he lifted it from the folding table. A thin split opened near the rim, and the weak tea slid warm over his thumb, a small, surprising ribbon. He caught his breath and steadied the cup with his other hand, feeling heat collect at the crease of his palm. The woman behind the table, hairnet floral apron, noticed and swapped it with a new one in a single smooth motion. "Sorry, love," she said. "These cups are tired." "It's all right." He wiped his thumb on a napkin that felt like thin cloth. The tea smelled faintly of lemon and dust. He took a careful sip. It was better than it looked. The basement hall spread low and long, paint the color of old cream, a line of drawings taped crookedly along one wall, stick families, bright suns, a blue rectangle that might have been water or sky. The radiator hissed and clicked, voices overlapped in a soft, ordinary tide. Someone laughed at a joke told too low to carry. Chairs scraped. A metal spoon rang once inside a chipped sugar bowl and settled. Addie, Theo stood on tiptoe at the cookie plate, his fingers hovering. They set free, he whispered, as if it were a secret. He held up a plain biscuit.
You want?
Go on then, the woman in the hairnet said. One each. Adam shook his head and felt his mouth tilt into a small smile.
You have it.
He watched Theo pocket it instead, solemn as a squirrel. Mrs. D appeared at his elbow, as if she had been there the whole time. Tia first, she said, with a nod that suggested a rule older than both of them. Her scarf was unwrapped now, and lay around her shoulders like a faded rose petal. She walked him toward a cork notice board that sagged slightly in the middle under the weight of staples and tape. Roof repairs, the heading said in blunt marker. Beneath it a printed estimate, numbers neat and definite, names on lines, some with amounts, some with just a promise of pray and see, a photo of a brown stain on ceiling plaster, ringed like the inside of a tree. He traced the edge of the paper with a fingertip. It caught on a stray staple. The numbers were not large, not in his world. They were heavy here. Leans when it rains, Mrs. D said, still keeps us dry enough, most days. He nodded. He didn't trust what might come out if he spoke. The room smelled of damp coats, instant coffee, and something sweet, maybe a stale sponge cake. A fan hummed in the corner, without moving much air. He lifted the tea again and held it in both hands for the warmth. Father Miguel, someone said, and a man in a black sweater with a white square at the throat, came up with 2 steps and a smile. Welcome. Adam reached out. Their handshake was brief and dry. Thank you, he said. Stay for the rector Sepp's tea, Father asked, motioning toward a narrow door marked privet with a peeling sticker that had once shown a fish. Quieter there, fewer biscuits, better chairs. Adam Sepp's phone nudged his ribs, a discreet buzz. He felt his shoulders harden, then made them soften again. Tempting, he said. I only have a few minutes. Another time, Father said, as if that were fact, not hope. Another time, Adam echoed. He heard how it sounded and wished he could edit it to something less empty. He glanced at the notice board again. A small hand touched his cuff. A little girl, hair in 2 loose pigtails, looked up with a sticker between her fingers, the shape of a gold star. For you, she said. He hesitated. He had a thought. I don't wear stickers. Then he saw the expectant tilt of her chin, the way one shoelace had given up, and lay like a white worm on the floor. He bent and stuck the star high on his lapel. Perfect, she said, checking her work. Now you stare shiny. He felt the laugh rise before he meant to let it. It came anyway, small and clean. Now I'm shiny, he agreed. The phone's second vibration was harder to ignore. He gave Mrs. D a small nod of apology and stepped toward the stairwell. The cement steps were cooler than the hall, the air thinner, holding a trace of rain. He climbed to the side door and pushed it open. Outside, the church sat with its back against the gray sky. The air had the wet metal smell that comes before a storm. Pigeons worked the grass like old men at a puzzle. He stood under the stone lintel and took out his phone. 3 missed calls. PR, chair, unknown. He swallowed and called back. Where are you? His PR chief asked, voice quick and tight. We Steph got photos. You at church? It's Step's sweet, but it's Step's a story, if anyone wants it to be. I set him visiting, he said. He watched a droplet gather at the eave, fatten, fall and break on the stone. Keep it quiet. The board chair wants 5 minutes. He switched lines. I sipped him listening. We close Monday, the chair said without preamble. No bumps, no feelings. Sign and move. You stare, not wavering. He heard the shutters click inside that voice, one after another. He looked toward the low building attached to the church, windows taped with paper hearts, a hand-painted sign that read shelter hours with a list in wobbly letters. He imagined the rooms inside, beds, shelves with folded blankets. A kettle that didn't boil fast enough. Not now, he said. We still talk later. It has to be now. A pause, then softer. You good? A child's laugh drifted out from the stairwell behind him, small and clear. He thought of the notice board with its slanting names, the oval water stain like a pale bruise. He pinched the bridge of his nose. I stum fine, he said. The word tasted flat. I still call after lunch. He ended the call. The phone's black screen blinked back his face in a pale rectangle. He slid it into his pocket. He felt its weight there, stubborn as a stone. The rain started as a mist, so light you only knew it by the way it softened the hair at your temple. He stood still, and let a few drops find him. He had a sense of two rooms inside him, one quiet, one crowded. He did not know which door to close. Addie, Mrs. D said from the top of the stairs. She held the rail with one hand, breathed a little high. Your tea will go cold. He turned. I stem coming. She watched his face for half a second as if reading the weather there. Some things wait, some don't sit. He nodded. I know. Back in the hall, the hum resumed as if he had never left. The gold star clung to his lapel, a small piece of light he could not take seriously, and could not bring himself to peel off. He passed the notice board again and paused. A pen hung from it on a string. He lifted the pen and clicked it. The sound was tiny, definite. He didn't write anything. He put it back. Biscuit? Theo asked, reappearing, cheeks sugared. Better save it, Adam said. For what? He looked at the ceiling and heard the radiator whisper. For later, he said, and felt, briefly, as if the word had width. Father waved from the private door, gentle and insistent. Adam raised his cup in apology. He did not cross the room. 5 minutes, Mrs. D reminded him, not unkindly. He looked at the clock above the kitchen hatch. The second hand swept its small, stubborn circle. He took another sip of tea. It had cooled. It still warmed him. He stood there, star on his jacket, phone quiet for the moment, and listened to a life he had not planned to meet call his name without raising its voice. A can rolled into his shoe and stopped like a question. Adam looked down. Tomato soup, dented near the rim, bright red label cracked where the metal had bent. He followed the slow wobble of it, and saw the torn paper bag at the hallway threshold, tins scattered like marbles. A teenager in an oversized hoodie crouched to gather them, cheeks pink with effort. Sorry, the boy said, breathless. Bag ripped. It happens, Adam said. He crouched too. The floor smelled faintly of bleach and old dust. He picked up 2 cans and set them in the boy's hands. The weight felt more than it should. They carried the rest into a narrow room with shelves, and a hand-lettered sign, pantry. The shelves were tidy but thin, peanut butter, rice, a few boxes of tea, an old scale sat on a side table, needle trembling between numbers. Thank you, the boy said, relieved. I stum Luis. Adam. Louis squinted, then looked away, respectful. We star open Wednesdays, sometimes Fridays if we have enough. The hum of the hall softened behind them, like a radio turned down. Adam touched the shelf with the back of his fingers, feeling the cool metal. He noticed how the labels faced forward, how someone had taken time to line them in a neat row. A soft knock tapped the open door. Father Miguel stood there, sweater pushed to his elbows, white square at his collar, crisis averted. Bag gave up, Louis said. Happens, Father echoed, smiling. Thank you both. He glanced at Adam. Come see something. They stepped into the side corridor. The paint here peeled in thin curls where the damp had teased it. A single window, ribbed glass, made the light look like water. Mrs. D waited by a bulletin board with her hands folded around her purse strap. She wore the look of someone holding a thought. Father pointed to a schedule printed and pinned with 2 pushpins. The shelter's lease sits on the property we're selling, he said. If it goes, they go. We're told they'll seek alternate accommodations. He said the phrase as if it tasted metallic. Alternate accommodations appear mostly in sentences, not neighborhoods. Adam felt the strap of his watch and adjusted it to give his wrist a breath. He kept his voice even. How many beds? 12, at most, Father said. 14 in winter. We pretend we don't see 2 extras. Showers. 3, temperamental, a wry smile, like people. Adam swallowed. The corridor carried the faint smell of laundry soap, like wet cotton and lemon. A hum came from behind a closed door, low and steady. He stood still and the stillness grew a shape. He heard his phone muted pulse once. He did not move to check it. Mrs. Dad nodded toward the far end of the hall. "Do you remember the window where you drew suns?" she asked. "Its steps still there, even if the glass is old." "Louis mentioned you have pantry days," Adam said, deflecting without meaning to. He heard himself, and felt the small wince inside. He turned to look where she pointed. The window wore a frame of flaking white paint. Condensation freckled the bottom edge. Finger smudges lived in the corners. He lifted his hand, then let it fall. He could almost see a fog circle, and a small hand making rays. It made him feel both close and far at once. A woman passed with a folded blanket pressed to her chest. She paused when she saw Father.
"Thank you," she said.
Her voice was tired but clear. "It kept my boy warm." "Any time," Father said lightly. "Bring it back when you can." She nodded and moved on. The blanket held like a promise. The interruption nudged a corner of the quiet. Adam felt the shift. He breathed in and counted to 3 before letting it out. A low drip echoed from somewhere above. Father looked up with a rueful tilt of his head. "The roof joins us when it rains," he said. "Adds percussion." "Do you have a quote?" Adam asked, almost to himself. "For the roof?" "Yes." Father lifted his eyebrows toward the hall. "On the board. It sits there like a well-behaved dog and waits." Adam Sepp's mouth curved almost into a smile. "And the shelter?" "That is trickier." Father rested his palm on the wall, as if greeting a friend. "The land sale is part of a larger thing. You know how these strands tangle." He knew. He had built knots like it for years, and called them strategy. He felt the old reflex rise, the neat cutting phrase, the clean step back, and didn't use it. He watched the light climb a slow inch across the floor. He had the sense of standing at a window between rooms inside himself. His hands wanted his phone. He kept them still. Mrs. D shifted her purse higher on her shoulder. "We can make do longer than people think," she said. "But we shouldn't have to." Her tone stayed gentle. The words found their own weight. A thin, precise sound broke the moment. The snap of a plastic light cover giving way. Adam turned down the corridor. A volunteer on a chair wobbled as the cover in her hand buckled. She caught it, surprised, and the chair rocked. Without thinking, Adam moved forward and steadied the chair with both hands, feeling the quick tremor of her weight above him. "Got you," he said. "Thank you," she breathed, half laughing. "Cheap plastic, the screws bite." He held the chair until she stepped down. The moment lasted 5 seconds. It left his palms tingling. He looked at the cracked cover, the yellowed translucence. A small fracture ran from the screw hole to the edge, neat as a hair. He could picture the box where the church kept spare bulbs, each one a little different, the box itself too big for its shelf. "See," Father said softly, not to the light but to the room they stood in. "Always something to tend." They walked back toward the hall. The air warmed by degrees, and the sound of voices gathered them, easy as a sweater. On the corkboard, the roof repairs sign waited with its patient numbers. A new name had been added in a careful hand. $10. The ink was still shiny. Adam stared at the line. He felt a tug low in his chest, like something anchoring. Theo popped out from behind a stack of folded tables, hair shocked straight from static. He saluted with 2 fingers.
"Eddie, look!"
He whispered, proud. "I can carry 2. He had 1 table, not 2. He struggled and did not complain. Adam slid a hand under the far edge. "We'll carry it together," he said. They walked to the corner where other tables leaned in a near straight line. Theo beamed and scuffed his sneaker on the floor. "You're strong," he reported. "Teamwork," Adam said. Theo nodded, satisfied. "My teacher says that too." A laugh floated from the kitchen hatch. The woman in the hairnet shook her head at something someone said out of sight. "Heard that," she called, cheerful. She lifted a kettle and steam rose in a white thread. The smell of tea moved through the room with a weary grace. Adam's shoulders eased a notch. It felt like loosening a tie. Mrs. D stood beside him, looking at nothing in particular. The expression of someone who lets silence do work. He looked at the roof poster again, and then at the shelter door. Both waited, neither begging. He lifted his hand and pressed 2 fingers against the cork, feeling the give of it, the roughness. He did not pull away quickly, he wanted the texture to stick to his skin. Outside, rain touched the windows. It ran in thin, slow threads. He watched one line find another and join it, the way quiet agreements are made. He closed his eyes for a heartbeat. He opened them and saw the gold star still clinging to his lapel, a small, stubborn light. "Smaller than you remember?" Mrs. D asked, voice low. He considered. "No," he said. "I think I been the one who got large." She smiled without looking at him, as if the room had given her the line. "Welcome then," she said, "to the right size." A cold drop found his cheek and made him look up. It was the simplest sign, one bead slipping from a hairline crack in the plaster and landing on his skin as clean as a fingertip. He blinked. Another drop formed beside it, fattened, trembled, and fell. The second hit his wrist. He felt the shock of chill through his sleeve. "Buckets," someone said, not loudly, already moving. The room had been in that soft aftermath drift, voices low, chairs half folded, the smell of tea and damp wool. The rain ought to have been outside. It was inside now, choosing its path. A brown stain on the ceiling bloomed a shade darker, like a thought surfacing. Adam reached for the nearest plastic bin. It was cracked at one corner and still good enough. He slid it under the drip, and heard the first small ping as water hit plastic. The sound was precise, almost polite. He found another bin stacked inside the first, and set it 2 pews down where the plaster made a faint map of rivers. "Here," Theo said, appearing with a mop that was taller than he was. "I can help." "Careful feet," his mother called, already pulling a coat rack out of harm's way. A volunteer dragged a yellow caution sign into the aisle. It opened with a sigh. Father Miguel pointed to 3 more leaks, calm as if assigning seats. "There, and there," he said. "We still shift the front pew." Adam felt the hum in himself that came when a problem had edges. It was not the boardroom hum. It was simpler. He took the end of a pew and lifted. The wood was heavier than it looked. It scraped the floor with a soft protest. Luis moved to the other end without being asked. The 2 of them slid it a foot, and then another. When they set it down, Adam's hands tingled. He didn't mind. The rain thickened overhead, and the roof joined the conversation. The sound was steady, 1,000 small fingers drumming. In the choir loft, someone hushed a child. The hush turned into a low hum, a tune without words, the kind people know before they learn songs. Water found a new seam and fell in a thin thread. The first bucket received it and made its delicate ping, ping, ping. Adam crouched, set a towel to catch the splash, then stood too fast and brushed the underside of the pew with his shoulder. Dust rose in a patient cloud. It smelled like old wood and paper. Mrs. D pressed a small stack of dry cloths into his hands. He folded one, pressed it to the floor by the bucket's edge, and felt the small satisfaction of seeing water soak and stay. He looked up at the ceiling again. The stain looked like a ring left by a forgotten mug. He felt a flash of anger at its ordinariness. He did not know who the anger was for. A little girl in pigtails, star stickers on her cheeks, held out a plastic cup. "Mine has cracks," she announced, solemn. "It leaks." She tipped it to show the split near the rim. "Trade," Adam said, handing her a sturdier one. She nodded and ran with the wobbling seriousness of a small courier, shoes squeaking faintly on wet floor. Another drop found his jaw and slid to his collar. The cold made him catch his breath. He wiped it with the back of his hand and tested the bucket's weight. He lifted it, walked the slow, careful steps of someone carrying a sleeping child, and poured the water into a larger bin by the door. It made a satisfying glug as it met the pool already there. "Good," Father said from beside him. It wasn't praise, it was agreement. The pings altered in tempo as different drips found their rhythms. It became a scattered percussion, gentle and insistent. The choir's low hum floated down and met it. The 2 sounds fit like rain on a tin roof, and a voice that wouldn't let fear get large. A man in a brown jacket slipped on a wet patch and caught himself with a laugh. "I'm fine," he said, hands spread. "I'm fine." His laugh landed light, reassuring the room. Adam felt his own shoulders loosen a notch. He had not noticed they'd tightened. They moved pews back another foot. They wiped. They watched. The work was small and exacting. No speech required. The ordinary action steadied him in a way he had not expected. He was aware of his breath. He was aware of heat blooming, where his shirt stuck to his spine. He was aware of how the old woman's scarf had taken on the color of rain and shadow. A young mother bounced a fussy baby in the aisle, pacing a narrow path. She met Adam's eyes briefly, a little smile of thanks for something he hadn't done, or for the fact that he was there at all. He nodded. The baby sighed, and let his head fall against her shoulder. At the back, next to the kitchen hatch, the cork notice board waited. The roof repairs paper had buckled a touch at one corner. A pen hung on its string, knocking the board lightly every time someone walked by. He heard the knock now. Tap, tap, tap. It kept time with the pings. Theo tugged his sleeve. "Addie," he said, pointing. "Your star is wet." He glanced down. The gold star on his lapel had darkened around the edges. It still held. "It's a swimmer," he said. Theo grinned and returned to his assigned bucket with solemn dedication. A drip began to wander off the edge of the bucket and land on the floor. Adam folded another cloth and laid it where it fell. He pressed it with 2 fingers, feeling the cool through the fabric. The sensation made him think of a day in winter when he had pressed a coin of ice against the radiator to hear it hiss. He couldn't remember how old he'd been. He could remember the hiss. The hairnet woman from the kitchen appeared with a tray of mugs. "Hot water with lemon," she announced, pragmatic, for cold heads. She handed Adam one. The steam fogged his glasses for a moment. He took a sip. The heat surprised his mouth and spread. Mrs. Dead stood under the worst stain as if she could shame it into stopping. "Old sheep," she said to the ceiling, a private scold. She set a bucket with careful hands. Her fingers trembled, but the bucket landed true. "It will hold," Adam said. "It will until it won't," she answered, simple and correct. He looked over at the notice board again. The list of names was shorter than the crack in the plaster was long. New ink shone near the bottom. $10. 5. Prayer. A space left blank, as if someone had meant to write, and then remembered their rent. He felt not guilt exactly, but a keen awareness of scale. The pen on its string tapped again. Tap, tap, tap. It sounded like a polite throat clearing. Another drop struck his cheekbone, colder now. He closed his eyes for a count of 2. When he opened them, the drip had thickened into a narrow thread. He shifted the bucket half an inch. The sound became more certain. "Thank you," Father said quietly. Adam nodded. The rain eased. The pings slowed. The room breathed out, the way a crowd does after a held breath. People wiped their hands on cloths that had become the color of old storms. Someone clapped once, a small, half-joking applause that turned into a ripple and died. Laughter, soft and relieved, answered it. They righted the pews. They folded a towel over the handle of a bucket to keep it from rattling. The child with the star stickers collected a few fallen drops in her palm and held them up to the light, delighted that water could sit there like a jewel and then escape between fingers. At the board, Adam paused. He lifted the pen. The string tugged. He clicked it. The tiny sound felt louder than it should have. He didn't write. He looked at the figures again, at the photo of the stain in neat daylight, at the names that had stood up to be counted. Later, he murmured, not sure if he spoke to himself or the paper. Mrs. D joined him, breath a bit short, scarf damp along one edge. She followed his gaze. "It always looks like less on a page," she said, "more in a bucket." He glanced at her, the corner of his mouth trying to be a smile. Outside, the rain thinned to a fine silver that the wind could carry. Inside, the buckets stilled into their own reflections. The choir loft went quiet. The building made settling sounds, polite little pops and sighs. Adam reached up and touched the edge of plaster where it buckled, then stopped himself. He put his hand down. He felt the tacky damp on his skin dry by degrees. Theo appeared with a towel around his neck like a cape. "We saved it," he announced. "For now," Adam said. "For now," Theo agreed, proud. He gave a thumbs up, then ran to return his bucket, feet careful, arms wide. The gesture made Adam's chest warm in a slow, specific way, the feeling you get when a small thing is righted and sits back where it belongs. He stood a moment longer, listening to the quiet, the after sound of rain. The gold star on his lapel had peeled at one point and held at another. He pressed it down with a thumb. It stuck. He let his hand rest there a beat, feeling the paper's cheap grain, the little grit of a thing that still chose to hold. The teaspoon sang once against the cup, a bright ping, and she asked it. "Have you been to your mother Sep's grave, Addie?" The question didn't arrive with pity. It arrived like weather, inevitable, mild and honest. Adam's fingers tightened around the warm paper cup. The heat pressed his skin through the thin wall. He felt his breath stop, and then return in a shorter line. They had found a quiet corner of the hall, a folding table with a plastic cloth, 2 chairs that wobbled, unless you chose the right legs. A small plate of biscuits. No one was eating. The air smelled of tea steam, damp wool, and floor cleaner. Someone had left a cardigan on the back of a chair, the fabric pilled and soft, one cuff rolled. He set the cup down. The rim left a wet ring on the plastic, faint and perfect. He ran a finger around it once, without thinking, then wiped the circle with his sleeve. "No," he said. The word felt like a stone he hadn't meant to pick up, and now could not put down, not in a long time. Mrs. Dodd nodded as if he had told her the weather would hold through the afternoon. "All right," she said. She didn't lean closer. She didn't lower her voice. "You could go." He looked at her scarf, at the way the knit had thinned where it met her shoulder. "I know." A small interruption arrived at ankle height. Theo's paper boat, folded from a church bulletin, sailed bravely across a thin puddle left from the leak. It reached the edge of the towel, and tipped, nose first. The little hull darkened as it drank. Theo knelt and watched it sink with grave interest. "It was fast," he reported. "It was," Adam said. The boat's slow collapse sent a careful ache through his chest, the kind of ache that feels almost like a yawn you refuse to take. Mrs. D wrapped both hands around her cup. Her ring clicked once against the cardboard. "You look like your mother when you listen," she said. She used to tilt her head a little, as if it helped the truth arrive. He felt his mouth pull toward a smile, and did instead let it go. She tilted. "Just so," Mrs. D said, mirroring it. It made people kinder in what they brought her. The radiator hissed softly. In the kitchen hatch, the woman with the hairnet laughed at something hidden, then coughed. The hall moved around them, the gentle disorder of a place where people put away their own chairs. A kettle clicked off, and the sound settled like a small bird. Adam lifted his cup again. The tea had cooled. Lemon clung to the steam anyway. He swallowed and felt the warmth slide down the center of him. The weight in his pocket reminded itself to exist. He ignored it. "I should tell you something," he said. He tested the legs of the chair with a small shift of his weight, found the steady angle, and let himself rest. "The property next door, the sale. If it goes through, the shelter loses its lease." Mrs. D didn't flinch. She looked at his face in a simple, direct way, as if checking the weather there too. "And you," she said evenly, "are the one who decides whether it goes through." "I am one of them," he said. It sounded like a hedge. As soon as it left his mouth, he corrected it. "I am the one who can stop it. Will you?" He looked past her to the notice board. The roof repairs paper had a new thumbprint near the corner. The pen on its string lay still. He watched a dust mote spin in the shaft of light that reached the board, and thought of all the small things that stay in the air longer than you think they will. "I don't know," he said. "I came to think, the confession didn't feel noble. It felt plain. Everyone has a good reason," he added. Softer, "the company. The board, the numbers. They always make sense on paper." "Paper is good at sense," she agreed. "Life is good at meaning." The line struck him like a small, clean bell. He touched the star sticker on his lapel without thinking. It was still there, a stubborn flare of gold. He pressed its edge flat with his thumb, and left his thumb there a moment longer than needed. The child with the star stickers on her cheeks toddled past, dragging a coat sleeve longer than her arm. She paused at their table, peered at his cup, and announced, "I like the yellow ones." "Lemons?" he asked. "Stars," she said, pointing to his lapel. Then, satisfied, she walked on, her shoes making small squeaks that sounded like agreement. Mrs. D watched the child go, smiling with her eyes. "When you were small," she said, "you took 3 steps right there." She pointed past him to the aisle he couldn't see from the hall. 1, 2, 3. She tapped the table in time, a gentle percussion. You chased the light like it owed you something. We clapped. Strangers clapped. Even Mr. Romano, who hated noise, clapped. Your mother cried and then laughed, because she cried. He tried to summon the picture, and failed again. He felt a warmth move across his chest anyway, slow and careful. His throat tightened. He looked at his hands. They were steady on the cup, he thought, for a brief and piercing second. I forgot to be someone's son. He breathed out. She would have liked you, he said. She did, Mrs. De said, and the present tense in her sentence felt like a small mercy. The phone in his pocket began to buzz. He knew the pattern now, short, insistent. He let it buzz and end. It started again. He took it out, looked at the screen without seeing, and turned it face down on the table. The plastic cloth made a soft sound under it, like a sigh. You can take it, she said. I know. Theo reappeared, solemn, holding the limp paper boat by its keel. It drowned, he reported, disappointed but not undone. Maybe we make another, Adam said. With thicker paper, Theo decided, already scheming, and darted away. The radiator clicked again. A draft moved from the stairwell and lifted the corner of a flyer. Adam pressed it down. The paper was cool and thin under his palm, a little damp. He left his hand there, feeling the table's wobble settle with the added weight. Mrs. Dest's voice came light and steady. You could go, she said. To the grave. Before you decide anything too big. Say her name, see what your body does. My body, he repeated, as if the idea were new. It knows more than your paper, she said, sometimes. He nodded, slow. The thought touched a place behind his sternum and stayed. He felt tired in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. He looked at the door to the stairwell. The paint had peeled there in thin curls that looked like shavings from a pencil. He pictured the path beyond it, the small lot, the gate that stuck in summer, the short walk to the cemetery where the stones leaned and the names had weathered into a soft kind of truth. Will you tell father about the sale? Mrs. D asked. Yes, he said. Then so quietly he wasn't set sure she stumbled here. I so tell him I can stop it. Good, she said. She didn't clap her hands or lean forward or thank him. She sipped her tea. When will you go? Now he heard himself say. The words surprised him and felt correct in his mouth. Take a flower, she suggested, as if offering a coat. There steps a vase by the side door. He stood. The chair rocked and then settled. He picked up his phone, turned it upright, and powered it off. The screen went black and held his face for a second before letting it go. He slid it into his pocket, and felt the absence of its hum like the end of a headache you hadn't admitted to having. At the stairwell he paused. A toddler brushed his leg and then looked up, startled. Sorry, the child said, though there was nothing to be sorry for. It's all right, Adam said. He rested a hand on the rail. The wood was smooth where hundreds of hands had made it so. He glanced back. Mrs. D watched him with that small ordinary warmth he had begun to recognize as the shape of this place. Tell her hello, she said. I will, he said. He took the steps slowly, the cool air meeting him in plain greeting. At the side door, a thin vase held 3 carnations, red gone deep with time. He lifted one, felt the dampness on his fingers, and was surprised by how sharp and clean the stem smelled. Outside, the rain had thinned to a drift. He stepped into it, the flower in his hand, the star on his lapel, and a quiet weight in his chest that was not a burden exactly. More like a hand on his back, guiding. The grass held the rain like a breath that hadn't been let go. Adam stood by the stone and set the carnation down. The flower looked bold against the gray, too bright for a day that had kept its voice low. He touched the name with 2 fingers and felt the shallow cut of letters, the way time softens even sharp work. His coat soaked at the hem. Water crawled up the fabric in a patient climb. He did not move for a while. The quiet felt exact. Hi, Mom, he said. His voice went thin in the open air. I sit some late. A breeze shifted through the yew trees and made a small, steady hush. Somewhere beyond the fence, a dog barked once and then twice, as if choosing the right number. He let his hand rest on the stone. His shoulders loosened. He breathed in the smell of wet earth and cold metal from the gate, and the faint green of cut grass that remembered a summer long past. A sparrow hopped near his shoe, unafraid. It pecked at something invisible, and then tilted its head, checking him with one bright eye. The small life of it pinched his heart in a clean way. He lowered his gaze. "You would laugh at the star," he said, glancing at his lapel, the sticker held, edges darkened. "You'd say it suits me more than the watch." He was quiet again. The quiet did its work. He felt it travel through him, slow and careful, filling spaces he had learned to keep empty. He thought of the aisle, 1, 2, 3. He thought of Mrs. Dide's hands folded around her cup. He thought of the pen on a string, the cork's soft give, the roof's polite leaks like a nudge that didn't quit. The interruption came as a click. Not loud, precise. A camera shutter. He turned. A man in a hooded jacket stood by the gate, polite distance. Telephoto lens pointed down for the moment. The man lifted a palm, apology already in it. "Mr. Hale?" he asked. "Just one shot. Human interest. You hear? The church. It seeps nice." Adam felt his jaw tighten, then let it go. The moment had been still, now it rippled. He looked back at the stone. The carnation's head had gathered 2 drops. They quivered, then fell, darkening the name. He touched the damp with his knuckles and swallowed. "Please," the man said, softer. "I shall be quick." A second click came from farther along the fence. Another lens. A woman this time, hair tucked under a cap. "Sir?" she said. "Mind?" He exhaled. The breath drew a line through him. "Make it fast," he said, "and keep the stone out of frame." "Of course," the woman said. He stood with his hands at his sides. The camera clicked, an insect hum in the quiet place. He imagined the picture already captioned by someone else's idea of him, an easy sentence that missed half of what mattered. The thought slid over him like cold water and kept going. "Thank you," the man said, meaning it. He lowered the camera. "We heard you were back." "Who told you?" Adam asked. He shrugged. Not coy, just truthful. Phones tell each other things. Adam nodded. He looked at the gate. A strip of paint had peeled and hung like a loose ribbon. He reached for it, then stopped. He didn't want to take anything else. The woman lifted her eyes from the viewfinder. "They say the shelter's lease depends on your sale," she said, careful. "They say many things," he answered. She studied his face for a beat. "Are you going to close it?" He didn't reply. He looked at the yew trees. Dark green, ancient calm. He let the question sit there with him. He felt the familiar urge to move fast, to fix, to get back to the lane where numbers lined up. He didn't move. A small voice came from behind the fence. Curious, is he famous? A boy, not Theo. Older by a few years, bike helmet still strapped under his chin. "Famous for what?" the woman asked, cheerful. The boy considered. "He looks like he has a driver." Adam almost laughed. He didn't. The boy's frankness set something right inside him anyway. "Go slow on the path," he said. "I am," the boy replied, and pedaled away at a respectful 5 miles an hour. The rain thinned to a fine mist. Adam reached up and pressed the star flat again. It stuck with a stubborn little grit. He spoke without looking at the cameras. "No photos inside," he said. "Of the shelter. Of people. Not today." "Understood," the man said. He lowered his hood. His hair lay in wet lines. "There sits talk of a meeting. At the church. Basement." "When?" "An hour," the woman said. "They want you there." He nodded. He felt the time draw a circle around him, small and clear. He placed his palm on the stone once more, not long, just enough to say something his mouth couldn't form. Then he stepped back. "I still be there." They let him go. He walked to the gate. The hinge squealed in protest and then agreed to open. As he pushed it, a petal slipped from the carnation and caught on his shoe. He stopped, bent, and set it back on the grass. Small thing it felt right to do. On the street, the air smelled of wet concrete and fried onions from somewhere down the block. He passed the bakery with its window, half fogged. A woman inside was arranging loaves with the care of someone setting books on a shelf. He liked the way the crust caught the light, matte and sure. He kept walking. The church bell gave a single testing note and then stayed quiet, as if clearing its throat. Outside the church, a few people had gathered under the overhang, a man with a reflective vest. 2 women from the pantry, Louise, hoodie dark with rain. Their conversation stopped when they saw him. not suspicious, not eager, just ready. Mr. Hale, the man in the vest said, nodding, I run nights at the shelter. Adam, he said, please. The man nodded again, adjusting. We start meeting in the basement, to talk options. All right. A child tugged at his sleeve. Theo had found him, breathless from a small run, cheeks bright.
I told my teacher you were here.
He said, private pride shining. She said, "Be polite." Septa, I am being polite. You are, Adam said. The boy's shoe lights blinked once. Late, as if remembering. They went down the stairs together. The cement steps felt damp through the soles of his shoes. At the bottom, the air met him the way it had before. Tea, damp wool, old paint. The notice board waited with its patient numbers, and the pen on a string. It did not look at him. It didn't have to. He paused at the threshold. The hum of voices shifted toward silence, the way a room does when the person expected arrives. He felt the old itch at his collarbone, the reflex to square his shoulders and make a line that others could hold on to. He did square them. He didn't put on the other part, the hardness, the shine. The star on his lapel made that impossible anyway. Father Miguel stood near the folding chairs. You came, he said. I said I would. Good. Father Sepp's gaze fell for a moment to the star and flicked back up, mouth tilting. We still speak plain. Please, Adam said. A small, ordinary thing happened then. The fluorescent light over the sink flickered, hesitated, and chose to shine. Its indecision made the room laugh, just a little. The laugh loosened the tightness in Adam's chest by a finger's width. He took a breath that reached deeper than the last one had. Mrs. D stepped from a cluster of women and touched his sleeve. Her hand was cool and sure. We saved you a seat, she said. Thank you. Before we start, she added, glancing toward the door, would you hold this? She handed him a folded towel. Light, clean, it surprised him. He took it. Why? He asked. In case it rains inside again, she said, as if reminding a neighbor to check the oven. Her understatement moved through him like a small warm current. He nodded. He could feel the towel's texture against his palm. Simple and right. They sat. The chairs made their small screams and then rested. The room settled. He looked at the faces. Tired, alert, ordinary kind. He didn't know what he would say yet. He knew he would listen first. He placed the towel on his lap. The star held a stubborn glint under the fluorescent light. He let the quiet meet him, then he leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and opened his hand. The pencil snapped, and the room went quiet. It was the volunteer with the clipboard, thin man, neat beard, taking notes so fast the point gave way. The sound was small, a dry tick, and yet it paused everything. He stared at the broken tip in his palm, and then tucked the pencil behind his ear as if it could learn patience there. Someone passed him a pen. Chairs creaked back into their slow breath. Adam felt the moment like a tap on the shoulder. Father Miguel stood at the front, one hand on a folding chair, the other open as if holding the light in place. We'll speak plain, he said. We'll listen. We won't drown each other. He nodded at Adam, not ceremonious, just including him. Mr. Hale will hear us. Adam will ask what he needs to ask. A murmur answered. It sounded like people agreeing to be brave. The shelter manager, reflective vest now folded on a chair, cleared his throat. Nights run at 12 beds, he said. 14 when it seps bitter. He looked at Adam. We pretend we don't set C2 extra, but we do. People don't set fit neat. A woman in a wool hat lifted a hand. Showers back up, she said. Hot water quits at 8 minutes. You learn the dance. It's cold after that. She smiled with half her mouth, trying to make it easier to hear. A different voice from the back, careful but firm. I stayed there 2 weeks in February, the woman said. Got a job at the laundromat after. The cot did not make me lazy, it made me possible. Adam sat with the towel on his lap, large hands cupped around his knees. He felt the towel's faint damp still clinging to one corner. He kept his gaze steady. He nodded when someone's eyes sought his. He didn't interrupt. He noticed the smell of floor cleaner, the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen alcove, the way the fluorescent tube over the sink, thought about blinking and then decided to behave. The former employee stood without ceremony, middle-aged, shoulders like an old wrestler's, a knit cap pulled low. He didn't look angry. He looked used to lifting heavy things. I worked your line 12 years, he said. No introduction, night shift. When the layoffs came, my name was in the stack. I took it home in an envelope. He tapped the center of his chest once, as if checking it was all there. I got by, folks helped, not here to spit. Just to put my name in the room with yours. Adam felt the heat climb his neck. He unclasped his hands. I remember the night, he said, not the names. I should have. The words were plain. He tasted the blunt truth of them, and let them stand. The man Sep's mouth twitched. Some tired mixture of surprise and relief. Luis leaned against the wall, hood up, arms crossed. We don't have a place to push this if the shelter goes, he said. Pantry moves, folks don't always follow. Bus lines don't or make sense, rides get missed, you know. Adam nodded. He did. He thought of the graph someone would show him, the slide with arrows and cheerful colors. He felt his jaw tighten and eased it. A small interruption floated in from the door. Theo, late by a minute, held up a hand-drawn sign that read "Welcome" in shaky letters. He looked around for tape, and finding none, licked the corner and tried to stick it to the wall. It fell. He tried again with both corners. It fell again and skated a slow inch across the floor. The room watched. Theo shrugged, solemn, rolled it like a scroll, and hugged it to his chest. Later, he whispered to Adam as he passed. It will stick later. Adam smiled before he meant to. Later, he echoed. The word felt as if it belonged to the air here. Father gestured to the notice board. The roof repair sheet had gained another name in narrow, tidy script. Numbers, he said. Let's Seps put sizes on what we stop asking. We can Seps carry fog. The bearded volunteer, now armed with his new pen, went to the board. Roof, he said, writing as he spoke. A figure, not large in Adam's world. Large here, shelter rent to stay if the sale falls through, he added, looking toward the manager. A second figure, beds, blankets, heaters, a winter list. More ink, the pen squeaked faintly on the paper. A woman near the sink raised 2 fingers, then lowered one, nervous. We need bus passes, she said. People get jobs and miss day 3 because they could get there. That Seps the day bosses stop believing. Bus passes, the volunteer wrote, neat capitals. A man with a cane cleared his throat. Training, he said. Not speeches, the kind where you come out knowing the machine, paid while you learn. We fall out of the habit of being useful if we stand still too long. Training, the board gained, underlined. The fluorescent over the sink flickered once and went steady again. The room chuckled gently, as before. The small shared sound reminded Adam of a neighborly fence being leaned on at dusk. He let it loosen something inside him by a notch. He leaned forward. His voice came out low, even. What is the true number? He asked. For roof, for shower repair, for keeping those beds here, for bus passes, for training. Not the hopeful number, the one that once said have you in this room with buckets again next month. Silence gathered, thin and respectful. Then the reflective vest man said, we can find that. He glanced at the bearded volunteer, who nodded once, serious. A thin drip tapped the towel on Adam's lap. He looked up. A new thread had found a seam at the edge of a fluorescent fixture. He shifted the towel, held it open. The drip landed in a round, dark coin. It wasn't much. He steadied it with 2 fingers anyway. The cloth took the water without complaint. The act felt clean, like placing a small thing back where it belongs. The former employee spoke again, softer. Some of us would come back, he said. If there was a line, if it paid a wage that let you sit at the table without counting bites. He cleared his throat. We don't need speeches. We need doors that open both ways. Adam looked at him. What would fair look like? He asked. Start with a wage that remembers the rent, the man said. And training that doesn't end when the camera leaves. A low ripple of assent moved through the chairs. Not applause, agreement. Theo tugged at Adam's sleeve and tilted his face up so the light made his hair shine. You can fix things, right? He said. As if asking whether the sky still kept birds. He wasn't pleading, he was taking inventory. Adam felt his breath catch. He set the towel down and touched the star on his lapel, making sure it held. Sometimes, he said, His voice surprised him with its honesty. Sometimes I break them first. Theo considered this like a puzzle, then nodded. Practical. Okay, but then fix them. I hear you, Adam said. The bearded volunteer turned the board toward the room. Ink shone wet and black. Numbers. Items. Not fog. Father looked from the board to Adam and back, not pressing. Adam let the silence stand a long second. He felt the press of the phone in his pocket, still off, like a creature finally asleep. He thought of the grave, the carnation stiff with rain, the small petal he'd set back on the grass. He thought of the paper boat sinking because the paper was wrong for the job. He watched the drip tap the towel again, exact and patient. I'll need exact figures by morning, he said. He kept his voice calm, line items, timelines, and a person to answer my questions without fuss. He raised a hand before anyone could mistake it for a businessman's dodge. Not to delay, to do this right. He glanced at Father. I'll also need to speak to my board today. A breath moved through the room, some part relief, some part fear of hoping too fast. Mrs. Dye touched his sleeve in passing. Featherlight. Eat before you call, she said. Truth lands better on a settled stomach. The meeting thinned into smaller talk. Chairs squealed and stood. The reflective vest man shook Adam's hand, brief and dry. The former employee nodded in a way that felt like a first step onto a porch. Theo slipped his welcome sign into Adam's hands when no one was looking. For later, the boy whispered. Adam smoothed the paper. The corners curled from failed attempts. The words sat there, uneven and brave. He looked at the notice board, the towel, the people, the stubborn light over the sink, and felt a hinge inside him swing the only way it could. He didn't say the decision out loud, not yet. He stood, slipped the sign under his arm, and breathed. The room smelled like lemon, wet wool, and something warm from the kitchen, like toast. It smelled like a life that expected you to show up. Hold this, the carpenter said, and set a hammer in his hand. Adam looked up from the hallway table where the welcome sign lay flattened with a book. Morning light slanted through the basement window, making a bright blade across the floor. The air smelled of wet wool drying, lemon cleaner, and the resin of new lumber. Someone had left the kettle ready but not on. The room had the hush of a place that hadn't decided to be busy yet. He weighed the hammer. Solid, simple, he said. Okay, the word came out steady. He placed his phone on the table, screen dark. He did not turn it on yet. He pressed the sign's corner and listened to the paper. Give, then he powered the phone, scrolled to the board's number, and set it to speaker. His fingertip trembled, small and visible only to him. He curled it in. Clicks. A ring. Then the chair-sep's voice, precise and quick. We close Monday. We one stepped, Adam said. He heard his own voice as if from a step behind him. Calm. I sepum canceling the sale. Silence. Paper rustled on the other end. Then PR. We can stet. We can, he said.
And we are.
He kept his eyes on the lumber stacked by the door, pale ends stamped in blue. I self fund a community trust personally. Roof, shelter lease, showers bus passes. Training, wages that remember the rent. You self have the figures at noon. The bearded volunteer entered from the kitchen, a folder under his arm. He set it by Adam's elbow with a small nod, as if he had been listening and had timed the moment. Numbers showed through the manila, like faint bones. Adam tapped the folder once, a quiet thank you. On speaker, legal cleared a throat. There are obligations, she said carefully. I'm meeting them, he answered. Draft the reversal, call the buyer. I'll take the call if needed. He felt his shoulders loosen, then tighten again when the kettle clicked loudly in the background, as if volunteering an opinion. The sound made Father Miguel laugh softly from the doorway. The chair tried one more time, not unkind. You star sure. Adam trapped a wayward screw under his shoe. It had rolled from a jar and made a silver line for the drain. The small scrape of metal against concrete steadied him. Yes, he said. I am. He ended the call before they could pack words around it. The phone went dark. The room held its breath for a beat, then let it go. He picked up the folder. The top page was neat and exact, the kind of order he knew by muscle memory. He read line 1, then 2. The numbers were real and possible. Tia, Mrs. D asked, appearing like a habit you're grateful to keep. Her scarf was a clean blue today. It made her eyes look brighter. In a minute, he said. He opened the door at the base of the stairs and called up to the carpenter. How many lengths? 8 of the 2x4s to start, the man called down. Mind the edge. Adam climbed, the side door stuck as usual, then let go with a sigh. Outside, the air tasted like a coin after rain. A van idled with its back open. The driver smoked and crushed the butt under his heel. When he saw Adam, "You the guy?" he asked. "Today," Adam said. He reached for the first board. The weight told him the truth of it. He carried the wood down the steps, careful to clear the rail, and the scent of fresh-cut pine slipped up into his face, clean and sharp. He felt it settle somewhere under his sternum like a small right answer. Inside, Louise took the other end. They walked it to the far wall. The plank knocked his thigh, and he did not mind. Theo hovered with a box of nails he'd been told not to open. His shoe lights blinked once, then forgot. "Stack them flat," the carpenter said.
Adam stacked them flat.
When the last board slid home, he wiped his palms on his coat and looked at the towel still draped over a chair from last night. Dry now, waiting. He set his hand on the back of the chair and felt the wobble, the quick memorize and correct a body does without thinking. He turned to the small cluster gathering near the notice board: shelter manager, the former employee, the bearded volunteer, 2 women from the pantry. Father stood with them, Mrs. D joined, cup in hand. He cleared his throat. The act felt old and new. "I sip, sorry," he said. No speech, just the spine of it. "My decisions cost you. I knew that in numbers, I didn't know it in buckets, and towels and bus stops. That sip's on me." No one clapped. A few faces softened and then steadied. The former employee tipped his chin once, as if a joint had seated back in place. Adam lifted the folder. "I'll keep the shelter here," he said. "Lease covered by the trust, roof and showers fixed, bus passes for 12 months. Paid training with a job at the end or a record of why not. Wage floors based on rent, not wishes. We'll publish the numbers and dates. You'll have my name on paper." The reflective vest man nodded slowly, like someone testing a railing. "Who do we call when a date slips?" he asked. "Me," Adam said. He wrote his personal number on the top page and tore it off.
Yo!
The paper left a soft sigh. He handed it to the manager, direct. Theo tugged his sleeve and held up tape. "For the sign," he said. "Today it will stick." "Let's see," Adam answered. They crossed to the table. He lifted the welcome sign, smoothed the creases with the back of his hand, and pressed it to the wall. The tape held. For a second it sagged at one corner, thinking about falling. He pressed there with 2 fingers and felt the adhesive wake up. It stayed. "Good," Mrs. D said, approving in the way that small mercies deserve. He turned his phone face down on the table and left it. "I need an hour," he said. "I still be back before noon." The cemetery sat quiet, a low square of green with names that didn't demand attention. He left the phone in the car and walked in with his hands empty. The carnation he had placed yesterday had softened at the edges. He set 2 fingers on his mother's name and spoke it aloud. It felt different in the open air than it did in his head. The wind took half of it and gave the other half back. "I'm trying," he said. He waited for the shape of the words to settle in him. A small robin landed on the low stone to his right, cocked its head, and flicked its tail twice, as if counting. The tiny interruption made him smile without deciding to. He stood a while longer. He didn't plan thoughts. He let them pass like slow clouds. When he turned to go, he touched the stone once more, not as a ritual yet, but as a promise to return. Back at the church, he found sawdust in the air like gold dust in a shaft of light. He shrugged off his coat and carried more wood. The work asked for his back, not his titles. He liked that. The carpenter handed him a measuring tape. "Hold," the man said. "Mark at 42. Adam thumbed the tape to the line and made a pencil notch. The sound of the graphite on fresh wood was crisp, a clean tick he felt in his teeth. The former employee stepped up beside him, sleeves pushed, cap low. "I can show your crew the old cutter," he said. "It eats belts if you treat it wrong." "Show me," Adam said. They bent over the bench together. The machine sat like a blunt animal, familiar to the other man, new to him. The former employee touched a bolt, and the metal made a small, content sound. "Right here," he said. "This is where you listen." Adam listened. By the door, Mrs. D stood with her hands at rest on her purse strap, watching without hovering. "Work suits you," she said, when he passed her to fetch more nails. "It's different when it belongs to someone," he said. "It always did," she answered. He carried lumber until his palms smarted. He felt the star sticker under the dust, still there, ridiculous and right. He left his phone sleeping on the table. He lifted, he measured, he held and steadied. And for the first morning in a long time, he felt the shape of a yes forming in his chest, not loud, not clever, just steady, the kind of yes a building hears when a beam finally lands where it should. "You live here now?" the boy asked. "Already halfway up the steps." Adam paused with the key in the lock. The paint on the door was the soft green of old apples. It curled near the knob like a ribbon, forgetting its job. He looked down at the boy's scooter helmet, at the sticker of a lightning bolt on the side. The boy held a potted basil plant with both hands, soil crusted on the rim like brown sugar. "I do," Adam said. "Mom said to give you this," the boy said. "Welcome." He waited until Adam took the pot, then added, "Practical. It needs sun." "Thank you," Adam said. His fingers brushed the warm plastic. The basil smelled peppery, clean. He felt the small shake in the stems when a breeze crossed the porch. The key turned. The latch gave with a soft, familiar clunk, the kind that lands in your ribs because it lived there once. He pushed the door. The house exhaled. Air that had been keeping itself still moved over his face. Dust motes turned in the frame of light like patient snow. The boy peered past his elbow. "It's quiet," he observed. "For now," Adam said. "Okay," the boy nodded, satisfied. "Bye." He coasted off the porch with one foot dragging so the scooter made a low hush on the concrete. At the gate he looked back and called, "I'm Finn," as if Adam would need it to stay. "Adam," he called back. The name didn't echo. It sat simple in the front room. He stepped inside. The floorboard by the threshold complained in the exact place it always had. He stood in the square of sunlight and watched dust spin. The smell was old varnish, dry plaster, a little sweet from wood that had held its breath. He ran his thumb along the edge of the windowsill and came away with a soft gray line. He didn't wipe it off yet. A small interruption tugged his eye. A pencil mark on the kitchen door frame, low, with a date in tiny careful handwriting. Another an inch above it. Another. He set the basil on the counter and touched the highest mark with the side of his finger. The graphite left a faint shadow on his skin. He hadn't remembered the marks. His chest tightened, then eased. He set his coat over a chair. Sawdust from the church floor shook free like gold. He liked the way it landed on the dark wood and held the light. On the table he placed the welcome sign Theo had drawn, smoothing the dented corner with a thumb. He leaned it against the sugar jar. It leaned back, crooked and brave. The kettle on the stove was new. The motion of filling it felt old. He turned the tap, water knocked in the pipe, and then ran. He set the kettle on the burner, and struck a match. The flame took with a small blue whisper. He stood and listened to the water think about heating. His phone, face down on the counter, stayed quiet. He slid it into the drawer with the rubber bands, and the old instruction book for a microwave that no one owned anymore. The drawer thudded shut. The quiet grew a shade deeper. Outside, a delivery van stopped, and the driver left a small box on the porch. No knock, just the sound of cardboard on wood. Adam opened the door. A loaf sat inside the box, wrapped in paper, still warm enough to sweat a little. He read the note. From the bakery, welcome back. Sunday hours on the fridge. He smiled before he meant to. He brought the loaf in and set it beside the basil. The kitchen smelled like yeast and green. The kettle began its low pre-whistle hum. He watched the little rivers of steam batter the spout. He poured water over a tea bag and watched it cloud the cup. The first sip was too hot. He breathed against it, the surface pulsing a faint skin. He liked the way the mug warmed his fingers. He moved through the rooms with the cup. The living room window looked onto the maple tree that used to throw yellow light onto the rug in October. The rug was gone. The light had the same idea. Upstairs, the bedroom walls had that pink-gray tone old paint gets when it remembers a sun that isn't there anymore. He opened a window. Air moved. The curtain lifted and sighed down. A knock. 3 quick taps. He turned. Mrs. D stood on the porch, scarf neat, eyes amused. "Thought I sips find you here," she said. Finn ran by and reported the basil had landed. "It has," he said, and stepped aside. She didn't set come in. She stood with one palm flat on the door jamb, as if greeting the house. "You still need a mat," she said. "Rain will walk itself in." "I shall get one," he said. She looked past him at the kitchen doorframe. "Those marks," she said softly. "Your mother lined you up every birthday. You hated standing still." He swallowed. "I don't stop remember hating it." "You hated the pencil," she corrected. "Thought it took something from you." He laughed. Quiet. "It did." "Only what you stet already given," she said. "Keep them." She tapped the frame with a single knuckle, a soft hello. "We stet'll see you Sunday." "I said'll be there," he said. "Good." She squeezed his forearm, light and sure, and turned to go. At the bottom step she paused and looked at his lapel. "It is," he said, and pressed it flat with his thumb. She smiled and went. Afternoon slid into the house and made itself at home. He made toast. The crust cracked under the knife with a sound like a quiet yes. Butter left to shine. He ate standing at the counter, watching the leaves outside turn in slow private conversations. For a long minute he stood still, tea cooling in his hand, and felt the calm land. A small thing interrupted it. A ball rolled in from the open door, dull red rubber, tired squeak. It bumped his shoe and rested there like a pet. Finn's head popped around the frame, eyes wide. "Sorry," he said, "it escaped." Adam nudged the ball back with the side of his shoe. "It found me." Finn grinned. "It always does that." He picked it up, hugged it to his chest, and backed away. "My mom says the church roof won't set trip on people anymore." "It won't set," Adam said. "Okay." Finn considered this new fact, then added, "You should come when the choir practices. It sounds like when you open a window." He vanished, quick as a page turned. Evening drew the edges of the room in. He put on his coat, lifted the towel from the chair, and folded it into the drawer by habit. He set an alarm, not on his phone, but on the old wind-up he found in a box. The tick lived on the nightstand like a small animal. Sunday came with clean light, and the smell of cold. He walked to church, hands in pockets, collar up. The bell gave a single note, testing the sky. Inside, the buckets were gone. A neat square of new plaster waited to be painted. The choir warmed their voices on a gentle vowel. He took a place near the aisle. Midway through the hymn, a toddler stepped out from his mother's knee. 2 steps. A third. Wider. The small body, finding balance like a secret it decided to share. The room noticed and didn't interrupt. The child's shoe lights blinked once, late, and then caught up. The mother reached without grabbing. The toddler kept going, a focused wobble, mouth set in the work of it. Adam felt his fingers tighten around the back of the pew, then loosen. He breathed out through his nose, slow. The moment packed his chest with a warmth that lifted and settled. Mrs. Detta's hand found his for a second, quick and cool. He didn't look at her, he didn't need to. After Mass he stacked chairs, metal on metal, making small, honest complaints. Sawdust still clung in the seams of his coat from yesterday's boards. Father nodded toward the repaired ceiling. "First coat holds," he said. "It will," Adam said. Back home, he stood on the porch with the basil in the last slice of sun. He pinched a leaf and rubbed it between his fingers. The smell rose, bright as a bell. He went inside, set the plant in the window, and took the welcome sign from the sugar jar. He taped it to the fridge, pressing each corner until the paper agreed to stay. He sat at the small table with a cup of tea and the loaf's heel listening to the house. Think, pipes settled. A branch ticked the glass, somewhere a neighbor laughed, and a door clicked shut. He touched the pencil marks with 2 fingers and felt the graphite again, that faint evidence of growth. He set his palm flat against the doorframe beside them. He didn't speak, he didn't need to. Outside, a car passed and then quite returned, as if it had been waiting for him. The room held the day's small gains. A basil plant, a warm mug, a sign that kept its word. He let his eyes rest on the window where the light thinned and went soft. His breath fell into the pace of home. He could feel in a way that didn't need paper, that he had come back to the right size.